Hey everybody, my name is Hayden. I'm a full-time software engineer and welcome to my channel. In this video, we're going to be learning about Python functions. Functions are the fundamental building block of the Python programming language, and mastering them is essential to becoming a proficient Python programmer. But don't worry, in this video, we're going to go from learning about how to define a function all the way to more advanced topics like lambda functions and variable length arguments. Stick around to the end, take it all in this video, and we will go through it step by step. Okay, so if you've been following along in this tutorial series so far, what you want to do is go back to PyCharm. You'll want to create a new Python file in here, and I'm going to call this one functions. What are Python functions? So basically, before we've been writing code kind of like, x, well, let's do 1 plus 2 is equal to a value x, and then we're saying like print, for example, x, and then we're saying, x plus 5 is the value y, and then we're saying print y. But let's say, we keep doing this. So we've done addition here twice. And what a function does is basically encapsulates a bit of code that you can then call this function, and it will do the thing that you've encapsulated for you. So for example, if we just write a function that adds two numbers together, then we can encapsulate these two lines of code into one piece of code that we can then check, test, we can write it once, and we can keep using it everywhere, and we know it works. Whereas if I've done this multiple times, I might make a mistake, like I might accidentally put minus here, or I might actually put times here, for example, and it has very different meanings. But what we can do is create a Python function to kind of do this all for us. Okay, so how do we write Python functions? Let's start by doing that. So in order to write a Python function, you need to use the keyword def. That defines a new function in Python, and that's that little prefix at the start tells Python that this will be a function. Then we actually have the name of our function. So I'm going to say we have a name, let's call greet. That is the name of our function. And then you need to pass these curly braces to it to say that this is a function, and then this little colon at the end to say I've finished defining my function now. Then if we come to the new line, we can say print something like hello, because this is a greeting. Hello, let's say Haydn, for example here. And then this is our function. Now if I come down here, and I call our function, so in order to call a function, you just write the name of the function with the curly braces, exactly how you've kind of defined it, and then run it. So now if I run this function, come down into the console, you can see we've got hello Haydn. Now, that's great, but obviously this function doesn't do anything else except print this. So the good thing about functions is that you can basically pass in variables into functions called arguments, and then they can change what happens inside the function. So let's say here, this is obviously very specific to my name, but let's say we want to pass in, for example, a name into this function. Then inside the curly braces, I can pass in the name here, and then I've got access to that variable here. So if I put an f, create this into an f string, do the curly braces and write the word name now, what's going to happen is it's going to print out hello, and then it's going to replace this with whatever name we pass in. So you can see here PyCharm has actually told me that this is going to fail because it expects us to pass in a name undefined. So what I can do then is pass in Haydn here, and Python now is going to take this and replace it there. So if I run this function now, you can see we still get hello Haydn again, and I can change this to say Sally this time and run that, and I get hello Sally this time. So now you can see I've got lots of repeated code. So I can say hello. Let's say I've got three different things here: hello software, hello engineer, hello Haydn. Not that that makes grammatical sense, but you can see what's happening here is that we've got one piece of code now, and we're getting like the same. We're reducing the complexity of our code and repeatability, and we're reducing duplication because this one function is being run every time, and we're passing in different parameters each time. So this function here obviously only prints out this kind of hello, and we're not really getting anything back from it. So let's make another function here called something like add. Which takes two numbers and adds them together. Similar to looking of our previous example at the start of this video. We can print x plus y here, and then so similar to what we've got. And then if I do add, 10 plus 5, and then if I run this now, you can see it prints 15. But let's say I want that to be equal to y, and then I run that, and then I'm going to print out the value of y. What do you think the value of y is going to be? You can probably pause the video and have a check if you want. But we get none here, and the reason we get none here is because this function is just printing things. It's not actually returning anything. So in order to actually call this function and get a return value from it, kind of similar to our variable setup where we've got the kind of value of something on the right and then the actual thing on the left, we need to add a Python keyword called return. And then this will say, I want you to return this statement here. So we're doing x plus y, and I want you to return that. So whenever this function is called, you're going to return that into the value y. And notice how the value is none here, and then if I run again, we're actually printing out y here which is the value of 15. And there we go. We're now returning values from our function by using this return keyword. So notice the subtle difference. This isn't returning anything, it's all return none. In fact, this is exactly the same as me writing that, but in Python you don't have to do that because it will just do that automatically. But here we're actually returning the value of our function. So I'm going to come up here, back up to our greet function now. So we've seen that we can print these values, and we can see that you can pass in multiple arguments and you can return them. But let's say, for example, let's say most of the time I want this function to actually just return me hello Haydn, because that's the default case of kind of what's going to happen. So if I run this, you can see we get hello software and Haydn software engineer. But in the default case, I want to always actually print name. So if you don't pass me the name parameter, I want you to do that. In order to do that, you see in the kind of the function definition, you can do this equals sign and then give that a value. So you can now say name equals Haydn. And that means when I come down here now and I type greet, I can take this Haydn out and just literally call the function without any parameters, so not even passing a name in, and then the function will default to Haydn here and then print that out. So if I run this now, we're going to get hello Haydn twice. We get hello Haydn, so hello Haydn from this one and hello Haydn from this one, because the default value is here. So these are called keyword arguments, and you can basically default them to values inside the function definition, and then that means people don't have to pass that in. So that's super handy if, 99% of the time you want to use that one, but you do also want to give them the ability to override the value, essentially, if you're passing in a variable. So another type of function that you can do is pass in, essentially, you've seen that we've passed in 2 values here, but let's say we want to make another function called sum that basically takes in as many values. So obviously I can only add 2 numbers together here, but let's say I want to add infinite amount of numbers here. So I can say start, so I can essentially call this anything, but this is the kind of normal, what you would call these args for arguments, and then say this little star ahead of it means that there's going to be multiple arguments passed into this function. I don't know how many, but that will be defined by how the thing is called. So that means args is an iterable, so similar into the loops video that we recorded earlier in this tutorial series. If you look at that, then you'll see iterating over. But here we can say for number in args, and let's make a value of like result is equal to 0. And then we'll just say result is plus equal number return result. So I'm just going to loop through all the arguments, and then I'm going to add the number to results, and then we're going to return results. So now if I call sum, I can call sum with 1 value, and then so let's say I'm going to print the value of sum actually. So this should return me 1. If I come down here, I get the value 1. And if I copy paste this and pass in, so let's do 1, 10, 100. Let's do 1, 6, 7, 9, 8, 0, 1, 0, 2, 4, 7, blah, 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 blah. Oh, I missed a comma somewhere. So now I've got variable lengths basically in my function. So I've got one here with 1 length, one here with 3, and one here with, what's that, like 10 or something? I don't know. And you can see here that I get 147. So I'm passing in variable arguments here. So it's variable length arguments here, and it's looping through them, summing them, and then returning them. And that's what this little star method does here, which is super handy. So one of the last things to learn here with Python functions is these things called lambda functions. So lambda functions are essentially kind of anonymous functions that are defined in one line in Python code. And then you can use these functions, you can pass functions around and use them and call them. They're super handy when you kind of get into the more depths of Python. They're not that important to learn when you're first starting out, but it's definitely something to add to your tool bag later, and I'll show you how to do them. So in order to do a lambda function, you can write the word lambda, and then you'll have to tell the lambda what the input arguments are. So let's say x in this case, and let's say we want to make a function that squares a number. So if I do x squared, that is my lambda function here. So now I can assign this to a variable called square. This is my square function, and now I can call that just like any other function. So if I type in, I don't know, 5 here, then this isn't going to do anything because I'm not printing out the value of anything. So if I print this out, you can see at the bottom here we get 25. The function is basically the same, so we're passing in a value x and then we're squaring that value. Similarly, if I did let's do y, I'm going to do so in here now I need to pass in 2 variables. So I've got an x and a y, and they're being kind of unpacked in here for x and y. But now down in my lambda function, I need to pass in 2 values. So let's do 5. Let's do 5 and 5. So we should get 50 this time, because 25 plus 25 is 50, which we do down in our console here. And these lambda functions, they're really useful for doing like kind of one-line functions. You can pass them around. You might be thinking, why should I use a lambda function over a regular function? Most of the time, just use a regular function. That's what you should do. And when I say regular function, I mean a function like this, where you're just defining it. You can still pass these around, they're totally fine. And these are kind of good for when you want to kind of do things like map, reduce, and filters. And in Python, again, we kind of can get to them later in the tutorial series, but they're something just to be aware of in Python functions. Okay, so I hope that all made sense to you. Functions are so amazing when you start to learn them and understand them. They are honestly like the best thing ever, because you can reduce so much complexity in your code, because you can just have these functions that encapsulates some functionality in your app or your script, and then you can call that multiple times with different arguments, and then it will just give you the value back. So it means you can write the code once and call it infinite amount of times, and it will still do the same thing. It's so amazing once you kind of like get your head around functions. And really all you need to learn about is arguments, are passing how many arguments in, keyword arguments, so you know that when we said that greet, the name equals Haydn, kind of defaulting to thing, they're kind of the main bread and butter of functions. Once you get your head around them, they are so unbelievably powerful and so great to learn. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Please do comment below if you've got any questions. I will answer them for you. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.